Okay, we are in the middle of Genesis, breishis, chapter 1, sentence 8, or verse 8. Vayikra Elokim larakia shamayim, vayerev vayikra yom sheni. And God called to the firmament heaven, and it was evening, morning, day 2. Or as we translated, and by association of a power of boundaries with an expansive filter, balance is formed, and there is a power of gloom and a power of glow illuminating change. And we explained a little bit, and the main aspect of what we'll explain today hopefully will be about what it means evening and morning. But we're in the middle of it. So in life, we're relating the verse to life. After each experience, a person should take care to focus on their balance. The result of rebalancing is that it becomes part of a person's personal growth and connection with the Creator in creation. This is level 2 in creation. Level 2 means that there are two things here that are bonded but can become separated at a later point in time. So you can feel totally at one with something, but you're still two entities feeling one, and so at some point there can be a separation. So when you have delineation, description, even though they are one at this point, at some point they can become two. We learn that our balance is only cursory, as it only applies to the creation at the place and space that we exist in at the time of our rebalancing. As things shift, so does our balance or imbalance. One purpose of the soul coming to a body is to see how it relates to and deals with the physical realm, the physical body, and its ability to serve the Creator. So the soul, which is spirit, and the body, how they can serve the Creator together. Each one does their own thing, but together it goes through many changes, many shifts. And for the soul, it's a soul journey, and to see how to balance it with a soul journey. Since each moment is a new creation, it's also a new challenge, and therefore needs a new balance. Our individual ability does not compare to the balance as it was at the beginning, i.e. total and comprehensive. If one person were to attain such a state of perfection, because we are all one, therefore balance would revert to all creation, since we're all of one essence. So it only takes one person to restore that balance. Just as Adam and Eve, it took one person to create imbalance, it will take only one person to restore balance. Since that has not happened, we know that that no person since the beginning has existed on such a plane, because it hasn't happened. This is one of the understandings of relation of Mashiach, that the person who achieves that balance will be called the Messiah. And the moment he achieves that connection of balance and oneness with the Creator, all creation automatically is rebalanced, and it's not necessary to have a Messiah anymore. He's kind of irrelevant, other than he did what he did. Or she did it. It doesn't matter. Anyway, Mashiach will be the one that attains that level. And as soon as that happens, the need for individuals to bring balance will become irrelevant. Now, the person who is Mashiach could be a guide, could not be a guide for mankind on how to live with the Creator, but it will be a new level of creation and a new balance. Now, we translated Vayerev Vayikra as gloom and glow. Gloom is an appearance. So wake up and glow. The verse starts, and Vayikra, and by association, or he called, And every sentence that seems to start with and. You go through Chumash and you start a verse always starts and.
It includes something previously that happened.
It absolutely includes something, it connects something previous, but there's another aspect of the Vav. The letter Vav is not just an addition to what was before, but it's also, as we've explained before, the shape of it, a dot coming down, means something is drawn forth, something is drawn down. It's the formation of a lower dimension, a slower dimension, more limited capacity of something else. And the word Shamayim is a balance of opposite movements, or a balance. Why do we have to continue bringing balance into creation? Isn't it enough that there was balance at the beginning of creation? When something is created, the opposite is created. So when balance is created, immediately the imbalance is created. That's why things can often turn out different than we imagined, because when we create one thing, something else is created, and we don't know what that other thing is exactly. We don't understand what we're doing. We don't understand the opposite consequences of what we're doing, the opposite side. And therefore, the only one who ultimately understands what's happening is the Creator. Because the Creator understands both sides.
What is the nature of this imbalance?
Which imbalance?
After Adam and Chava sinned, they created an imbalance, correct?
They didn't sin. They created imbalance. The word chet,
Yes.
which is translated as sin, actually does not mean sin. Oven, pasha would be sin. Chet actually means imbalance, off center. What they did was brought imbalance into creation.
Then what is the nature of this imbalance that they established?
When we come up to the verse on talking about the tree and the fruit of Adam and Eve, we'll discuss what the imbalance is. And if you want to know the nature of it, well, we'll see if we can discuss what the nature of it is, but we'll discuss imbalance then. And since we didn't exist then, it's hard to say what it is when you don't experience it. You could intellectualize it, but experience something is different than intellectualizing it. Anyway, but after each creation, new creation and movement, the balance shifts. And that's why after every movement you need a rebalancing. Each day in our life we experience one thing or another. A person needs to take a breather to allow the body to integrate the movement and the shift and find a new balance. And sleep actually is very healing. It allows the body to rebalance itself. You get with renewed energy. Because when things are off balance, then your energy is off balance, and you can either become drained or use your energy in the wrong way, so you need to recenter yourself in whichever way you do it. Gloom and glow, we translated Erev as gloom and Boker as glow. We also did that on day one, or level one. We translated as gloom and glow, but this gloom and glow is different. Previously, there it dealt with haze and clarity. Darkness, cheshach being haze, and light being clarity. And now it deals with a different thing, surge and balance. Surge of energy and balance. That's one reason we translated in this verse, we put it here by he, and there is a power of gloom, a power. In the verse 5 we translated thus is a power, and here we translated there, because it's more forceful when we say there is something. When we say thus, it's softer. So the power in creation was a soft power. The power here is much stronger, and therefore it's more forceful, so we use the word there is. Gloom and glow represent many elements. It creates the need for decisions as to which direction to move or not to move. A person can connect with the Creator in both ways. One may be a shorter route and the other a longer route. Each decision takes the creation on a different journey. This world is a journey full of choices. The end result is chosen. As we've learned the story of Adam and Eve, they chose the fruit of the tree, meaning the fruit is the end result of the whole, of everything that grows, of the seasons, of the nurturing of the tree. The fruit is the end result. And that's what Adam and Eve chose for the future generations, the end result, the fruit. But they didn't know the journey. And the journey is what we're going through. The word Yom Sheni is second day. Sheni also means change. Two is a step away from one. A step away from one reflects a change, separation, plurality. The Hebrew word has the letter Shin and Nun, Sheni, Shin and Nun, spelling the word Shein, a tooth. It is also a base for the word Shoina, to learn, which is a further aspect in creation that we need to learn. As we experience, we learn things. The Torah teaches us that when we take an interest from a person, we take interest. When you loan a person money and you take interest, not interest as being interested, but interest on a loan, that's called biting. And it's prohibited to bite a person in any way, because it hurts a person. It's painful. Just and some additional commentaries on the verse regarding the word rakia, firmament, or as we translated the word rakia as an expansive filter. It says, and Moshe, it's in Exodus 24, Moshe went up with Aaron, Nadav, and Avihu, and the 70 elders of Israel. And then in the next verse says, they saw a vision of the God of Israel, and under his feet was something like a sapphire brick, like the essence of a clear sky. That's a direct translation of the words. But another way of translating the verse is, it came forth a vision concerning the power that directs Yisrael on a lower vibration, refinement that brings shine of transformation, on a deeper level, like the essence of Shemayim that shines clarity of the vibration in the origin of all creation. So when you read it in a simple translation, it's very difficult to understand it. You read it this way, it has more palatability and more relationship to life. And in Yechezkel, Ezekiel chapter 1, it says, and from above the rakia, above their head, is the appearance of shining letters that form a base. The rakia has a shine. The same word is used for shine of Shamayim, the shine of balance. The name Elikim has a numerical value of 86, which is the same as the word mum, blemish. This reflects that even though boundaries and limitations are necessary, there's also something lacking by needing them. You put boundaries on something because something doesn't know its balance. If something is balanced, you don't have to give it a boundary or a limit. If you know someone knows their limitations, then you don't have to tell them what to do. So if a person knows their balance, you don't have to tell them, give them any limitation. So Elikim is also an idea of a blemish. In several texts it says, Ke'alef Shanim Tehillim, Ke'alef Shanim Anachim Yesod, that 1,000 years of our years is like one day in Hashem's eyes. So when you're dealing with a day here, it could be 1,000 years, but when you're dealing also with shift and change, it means what for us takes a long time in concept, or on a spirit level, it can take a moment. So many times there are things that on a spiritual level, they should happen instantly. I'm open to the energy, I see the energy, I feel it, and it's happened. But in the reality, as it comes into the world, it could be many years away from actually happening. And that is an issue where people have had between this, what they see energetically and spiritually and the physical, they don't always balance with the physical reality. So everything you see, you have to balance. Come back and say, okay, what is the balance? It may be true in one place or one level, but not in another. I'm going to go through a little bit more of the verses here, explaining some of the words that we have, mainly Erev and Boker, gloom and glow. But before I do so, I'll just tell a little story. The story is told about a king who was the head rabbi in his city, there was a king who had in his city a head rabbi, and he went to the rabbi, he called the rabbi, and he said, "You're a wise and understanding man, and you're a nation, a wise nation, and believe in one God and power. I'd like to ask you a question. How can you be certain in your minds about a Mashiach, a Messiah that forces his rulership over the whole world?" Remember, you're talking about a king. The king believes in controlling everyone. How can a Messiah control everyone, be the one in charge? How can it be such a thing? How can one person go against nature? The rabbi responded by asking the king to buy 70 strong roosters and one young tender one. When the king got them, the rabbi said, put them together in one room and don't feed them for a whole day. The next day, after they were all hungry and starving, the rabbi and the king went to the room, and from the window they threw in one grain into the roosters, among the roosters. The roosters, who were starving, started wildly attacking one another. They pecked and pierced each other, and they all ended up with wounds. They were fighting each other. Meanwhile, the young one hid, was afraid of the older ones. A short time after was quiet. After all the old ones are fighting each other, they got tired, exhausted, and they were resting, attending to their wounds. It became quiet. So the small one poked his head out from where it was hiding and saw it was quiet, and no one is standing up. So the small one went confidently out of the hiding place to the grain, flapped its feathers, said kukurikoo, and ate the grain. And the rabbi said to the king, this is the Mashiach. One group is going to fight the other. It's going to be a world where everyone is fighting everyone else. And they'll be so exhausted from the fights that when a soft and tender person like the Mashiach comes, everyone will be so exhausted from their wounds, they'll be able to come and take over everything. And that's how I explained how it could happen. And we see a lot of that happening now, where everyone's fighting and people are becoming exhausted. And they're not exhausted enough yet, they're still fighting. So we'll see what happens. Okay, now going back to the word Boker, Erev and Boker. There is a power. Or a power means the essence of the driving force of whatever it is. Erev is gloom. It's when gloom is exposed and vulnerable. When gloom is exposed, the person is vulnerable to different things. When you're depressed, you're vulnerable. But so is joy. When there's joy and it creates protection, you're vulnerable in a different way. And there's a power of glow, or the essence, the driving force of glow is something which is exposed and it's available. Illuminating, these two things illuminate an expression of. In level 1, that was the first day, is level 1. In level 1, oneness exists with no physical concept of separation. It's all, the existence is one entity. The verses of level 2 bring a shift for the continuation of creation. But it creates an opening where we don't know what will happen. It makes it vulnerable. The word Erev, evening or gloom, is comprised of the same words as Ba'ar, Beis Ayin Reish, which mean ignorant or foolish. So in that sense, the gloom is because it's foolish. Thus is the power of, they are both, it's something that's constant. Whereas that was the way we explained it in verse 1.5. Whereas in this verse 1.8, it may not be constant, and therefore we write, there is a power. Not thus is the power, but there is. There's a power of Erev and a power of Baker, because it's not always there is. And before we said the reason is because it's a more forceful expression, and now we're explaining another idea in it. Glow, Boker is the same letters as the word Barak, which means a flash of lightning. Illuminating, the Ramban writes that any expression of action can be called Yom. The three letters of the word Yom move in the following manner. The first letter is a dot, the second letter is a dot with a line extending downwards, a Vav, and the third letter is four lines that create a box, the Mem. This reflects that from the Yud, the point of the creator, something is brought into a definition, into an enclosure, into a structure. And the word Yom harnesses the energy of the creator to become an illumination for us. Since we all live in a box, some of the boxes are smaller and for some bigger, but we all live within some type of limitation. In whatever limitation we have, in that's what the word Yom is, that the creator illuminates and is revealed in that space. The word actually Boker, besides morning, also has the word Bikuris, or Bikur. When you go visit someone who's sick, it's Bikur Chaylan, visiting, you call Bikur Chaylan, that you're going to see how they are. But Bikuris means to examine, or to inspect, to review. So in a certain sense, Vahi Erev, Vahi Vaiker, that on the day one, or level 1, level 2, it doesn't mean morning, but it means that the creation that was created on this level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, each time it's checked at the end of the verses that talk about that level. It says Erev Abayka, that it's checked, everything is fine. So instead of translating as Baker, you can translate it that it's audited or inspected, reviewed, examined, and it's ready to be used for creation. Now, when we used one in sentence 1, it was not as in first, but rather one as in something that's whole and complete. The same here is when it's not two as in two separate, but two of the same purpose and thought with an interchanging definition. They work together. Another way of possibly translating the verse is, and this is mixture, Erev. Erev also means to la'arev, to mix something, and with this is examination, establishing the oneness. So there's a mixture that occurs on level 2 that establishes the oneness in this stage of creation. That's another way it can be translated. Another way could be, and bringing forth to be examined both emanations of singular sharpness.
What does that mean?
I'm not going to go into the details of what it means. I'm just giving you different ways that the verse can be translated. We can sit down later on if you want to look at it, but I'm not going to right now. One of the things that I've been doing in the class is giving you variations of translations, not because I go into all the words and what those translations mean, but rather to show you it has different meanings and it's very expansive. And if you want to study it, you can sit and study it. It's not a 1 minute thing to understand. Okay? The words gloom and glow have the first same 3 letters, G-L-O. And gloom has an M, and glow has a W. The M is one way, and the W is the other way around. Now, in the Hebrew letters, the word Erev and Boker also have the same letters, base and resh. Boker has a kuf, a base and a resh, and Erev has a resh and a base. The difference is that one has a letter ayin, and the other one has the letter kuf. Now, in Hebrew, the first letter of a word is the main energy of that word. The other letters come from the energy of the first letter. So the word boker begins with the letter base, or bet, which we discussed when we discussed the beginning of Genesis, all the different meanings of that letter. But basically the shape of the letter is a line on top, a line on the right side, and a line at the bottom, and it's open, going forward. And so we have the idea of the first letter of Torah is open, going forward, and after that comes the kuf and the resh. Kar means cold. So the boker, the base, reflects the energy of Hashem, of the Creator coming through, very powerful, but it needs to be cooled down. It's like very hot. It needs to be cooled down. So that's what boker is. Although it's cool in the morning when you get up also. But kar is cold. It solidifies the direction of the base in the creation. The word Erev begins with the letter ayin. Ayin means an eye, and it's followed by the letters resh and base. Rav. Rav means many. In this way, the letters of the word represent the expansion of definition and energies of creation. So the ayin is an expansion of what you see, that you can see in all different directions. There is power. Is meaning it's installed, it's part of creation. As previously pointed out about power, the numerical value of the word vayihi, vav yud he yud, is 31, which is the same equivalent of the word power. El, aleph lamed is power, which is why we translate vayihi as power based on a numerical equivalent, a relationship. The vibration of the numerical value gives rise to strength, rise to angels, I should say. Angels are messengers. Later on in creation, you have angels, and they come from this. That's why the angels have the name El at the end of it. Gabriel, Uziel, Raphael, Sodiel means the power of this, the power of that. Whatever, then if you take the word El and you take the other word, it's always the power of something. So it's the vibration of Vayihi, that the resonance of it that brought forth these things in creation, these powers. And the sole purpose of most angels is different angels with different purposes, but most angels is to bring forth the creative movement within all existing creation. Gloom, the Hebrew word Erev represents a mixture of a lot of energy. There are several ways in which connections are affected between various letters and words in the Hebrew language. Each format of methodology represents a different kind of vibrational frequency. So one of these methodologies is called gematria. It's a form of geometry that uses different kinds of operations. The one that is utilized here we call mispar katan, which means making the number smaller. Mispar katan, the number 10 becomes 1, 20 becomes 2, the zeros are dropped, and the value is the single digit. Using this method has many interesting results and connections. And when you do it to the word Erev, if you spell out the word Erev, Erev is 3 letters, Ayin, Resh, Beis. Then the Mispar Katan, you have to spell it, Ayin is Ayin, Yud, Nun. The Mispar Katan, the number, it comes to the number 26. How does it spell out? Ayin, I is the letter is just a letter in itself, but if you want to give the name of it, it's Ayin Yud Nun, which is Ayin is 70, Yud is 10, Nun is 50. That's 751, which is a total of 13. The Reish is Reish Yud Shin, which is 200, 10 and 300, which becomes 213, which together is 6. And the letter Beis is Beis Yud Tov, which is 2, 10 and 400, which becomes 2, 1 and 4, which is a total of 7. Together it equals 26. And this is one of the ways we find the name of Yud Kei Vav Kei, Hashem's name of 26, that equals a value of 26 in all the words of Torah. This is an example here, but in different Sfarim, they say it's in every word of Torah. You can find some way to bring the word Yud Kei Vav Kei into that, relate it. And Gematria is one way we do it. Power, a different way of doing this is by exchanging the first letter of the Hebrew language with the last letter. This is called At Bash, Aleph with Tav, Beis with Shin, and using this method, the numerical value of Vayehi is 250, which is the same numerical value as the word Ner, which is a candle light. Thus, here we say Vayi Er, Vayi Vaiker, it's an illumination. When we say gloom, gloom does not accept many things, but glow does accept everything. When you're gloomy, you don't want to listen, you don't want to pay attention. When you're glowing, you're open to everything. So there's still things that you don't see, you may be blind to things, there's always a blind spot we have, but you're open to accepting everything. The word Yom, as we said, is commonly translated as day, but as we explained before, it actually doesn't mean day. It means a level of expression of the Creator into creation, based on the letters of it. And there are 6 levels in creation. Instead of 6 days, it's 6 levels. And the change that is happening, Yom Sheni, this level of change is just raw power of creation. There's more definition here, but it's still raw, it's not defined, as it will be more later on in creation. Power of gloom, a mixture of definitions, results in power that can either be or end up being gloomy. When you have a lot of information, you don't know which way to go. The gloom can bring about illumination when it's understood, or when a person sees within it a purpose of the Creator. So initially it's too much information, but if you know what you're supposed to do with information or where it's supposed to go, it gives you clarity, and then you know that it's no more gloom. When the Shamayim, the Rakia is called Shamayim. When the Shamayim is associated with gloom and not with glow, means you don't see the Creator's purpose in it. The power of glow, the feeling of glow is actually an amazing experience. But when the Shamayim is connected with glow and not gloom, then the ability for expression of entire levels in creation is not missed. You can see or accept the Creator's purpose in everything. So you don't have to understand anything. It's just because we have belief, we have full trust and belief that this is the Creator and the Creator's purpose. Knowing it's the Creator's purpose, we're able to deal with it as it comes without trying to limit it by our own mind and perception. But even glow has a dullness, especially when a person doesn't see the glow. Glow is a shine, but depending on the level you're at, will depend on the type of shine or how much shine there is. Vayikra, the beginning of the verse is Vayikra, calling or inviting. For the moment, all is Rakia or Shemayim, but Vayihi, in the future it will be changed. So the verse says, Vayikra likim larakia Shemayim, and by association of power boundaries of an expansive filter balance is formed. Vayi era vayi vaikayim sheni. So you can say that for the moment, all is Rakia or Shamayim Vayihi, meaning in the future, Yom Sheni, everything will be changed. In the Torah Shleima, he quotes from a handwritten copy of the Medrash Tanchuma that any time the word Vayikra is used, the written Torah, indicates something conditional, which means that all these things in the creation that are being created are conditional. They're conditional, as Hashem says later, if you do my Torah, everything will come in its time. If you don't do it, things will go the other way. Everything is conditional. And so here we have, as in this verse also, the Vayikra, the idea of gloom and glow, the differences, the variances are here because of the creation that has to ensue. But in the future, when everything is rebalanced and you won't need those differences, then everything will go back to the way it was at the beginning, and these differences won't be there. It's interesting to note that at any moment within a 24-day period, it's always day or night, 7 days a week, morning or evening somewhere on earth. And similarly, there's constantly balance and imbalance, shine and dullness, gloom and glow. So we spoke in the first verse about balance and imbalance. Then we spoke a few verses later about shine and dullness. And now we speak about gloom and glow. So even from the sun, there's always day. There's no such a thing as 24 hours a day because it's always shining. There's no night as far as the sun's concerned. As far as the Creator is concerned, everything is clear. But for us, there are always differences. From this and others, from here by Erev Vayka, we learned to count the 24-hour days beginning with evening. When you translate it, and it was evening and morning every day, that's why the Jewish calendar, the Hebrew calendar, starts from evening, when it gets dark. That's when the day starts, because that's how you have the days in the Torah, evening and morning. That's why we count it evening and morning as well. Although there are times we count the day from the morning, but that's in specific areas or cases. And in Leviticus 23:32, it says about Shabbos, from evening to evening you shall rest. So you see, the evening seems to be the beginning of the day. And therefore on Shabbos, we don't have the words Vayi Erev, Vayi Vayka, because Shabbos is just a full day of rest. It's not a day of work. Erev and Vayka represents balancing, imbalancing. It reflects changes, different things you have to work on. And since Shabbos is a day of rest, it doesn't apply. So the Erev Vayka is not said when you come, only on 6 days it says Erev Vayka. On Vaychol HaShamayim it doesn't say Erev Vayka Yom HaShvi, it doesn't say that. All desire comes from the Creator, the positive as well as the negative. The word Erev, gloom, also means mixed. It can refer to people being gloomy because on the deepest level within, they don't know where they truly belong. People are gloomy when they don't understand, don't know things. And when people become clear within themselves and realize their purpose in creation, the oneness is then restored to themselves and to creation. Actually, gloomy also, you have a gloomy day. Doesn't mean it's bad, something wrong with it. It's just a state of, it's not good or bad, it's just a state of the way it is at present.
You said that being gloomy it correlates with foolishness because a person doesn't know what their purpose is.
That's one aspect of gloomy, but that's not everything gloom means. When you say it's a gloomy day, it doesn't mean you don't know what you're here for. It has a different meaning. The same words have different meanings, depends how they're used.
So like gloominess is not necessarily a bad thing?
No, I didn't say it's a bad thing. I'm saying it's not. It's a word, it just depends how it's used and what the situation is. According to the commentary mentioned in Yalkut Mashiach HaGolah, the word Erev also means end. It's in the end of one thing happening before another can shine forth. Another way of translating the verse is that Elikim invited Rakia to share the feeling of Shamayim with the creations. So, in the first verse, you have the word Shamayim, heaven, or as we translate, balance of opposite movements. Here, it's not the same Shamayim as in the first verse. It's the Rakia, the firmament, or the filter. And this filter, Vayikra Elokim LaRakia Shamayim, that Elokim invited the Rakia to share the feeling of Shamayim, of balance, with the creations. That's the Sephorno translates that a very different way, unique way of saying the word. Since in Hebrew there's no real punctuation, therefore there are different ways of reading it. And this is an interesting way of reading it. And a lot of verses can be read this way, which is not the way it's commonly translated, or the way the punctuation is. The Ramban says on the first, the Shamayim was in Bria, on the second, it put on clothing to come into another form. The first level, it was in Bria, in creation. The second level, which is the level of this verse, it put on a different form. So it's the same term, but it's coming in different clothing, in a different way. And this is something very interesting and important to know about Torah, is that a lot of times it uses words, it says things, and the same word is used in different places. So sometimes we correlate the same word with something else somewhere else, but very often it's talking about a different energy. If you just go by the simple translation, you may think it's the same thing. But if you start looking at the intent of the verses in one place and another, you see it's the same word and it's talking about a different thing altogether. One of the interesting things that when I was younger that made me understand this is that you have many times the names of people that existed at one generation being brought down, not just in Torah, being brought down somewhere in the Nevi'im or Ksuvim, the prophets, the scriptures, and you find that people writing, oh, this person was 1,000 years old, was 2,000 years old, or this was, because it's the same name. So they say it's the same person, but the same name does not mean the same person. So I wondered why they make such an assumption. And the reason it seems to be simply because they're reading it simple and all the words have the same meaning. So it's here and it's here, it's the same thing. But if you start looking at the context, there's no relationship. So therefore, there's some people that take verses and read it in that way, and there are others who don't, who understand it in a more expansive manner. Any questions? Yes.
Well, how would you know if you saw the same name in two different areas that they are referring to two different people?
In order to understand something, you have to research. You look through the commentaries, you look at the history, you try to understand what's happening, how it happened. And you use a little bit of sense. So if it's the same name and it's within 20 years or 40 years or 60 years of the other name, it could be the same person. But if it's 1,000 years later and you want to say it's the same person, they lived 1,000 years, it's a little bit of a stretch. Yeah.
Well, maybe one of the reasons that that happens is because when there are people with the same name, there is some energy that is similar because of these similarities.
That's correct. The same name has a similar energy. So if you're comparing the energy of this person to that person, that would make sense. If you're saying the same person meaning the same energy, that would be okay. But that's if they wrote it that way. They don't always write it that way if that was their intention.
People are given names. Usually they're given names, people and right. I mean, it's not the same person. It's a different person with the same name, which is a certain energy that comes out of that name.
Yeah, we do find that. You do find if you take certain names and look at all the people with that particular name, you're right. They seem to all have a similar energy. I know to be careful of everyone that has that particular name. I stay away from, or I know what's going to happen. And people of another name, something else is going to happen. Absolutely. After a while, you start realizing it. There is something there. But you have to be careful because you don't want to judge people and separate.
Right.
You have to do it with an open mind and a protective way as well. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Claire.